Call this regular meeting of the San Marcos City Council to order. Today is Tuesday, March 21st of 2023. It is 6:01 p.m. Mr. Trevino, would you please call the roll for us?
Mr. Scott.
Here.
Mary Houston. Mr. Gleason.
Here.
Mary Houston.
Here.
Ms. Garza.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mr. Mendoza.
Here.
Mr. Prather.
Okay, and our invocation this evening is being given by Pastor Amy Sutherland of the First Presbyterian Church. The floor is yours.
Good evening. The words of my prayer tonight come from Jeremiah 29, which is a biblical text shared by both the Jewish and Christian faiths, in which God calls the people to pray for and work for the welfare of their city. Seemed like a fitting word for our meeting tonight. If you'll join me in prayer, please. Almighty and everlasting God, we invoke your presence among us and gratefully welcome your spirit in this place tonight. You have called us to seek the welfare of our city, for in its shalom we find our own. Here in San Marcos, we build homes and businesses. We plant and we harvest. We nurture friendships and families. We learn and grow and thrive. In short, O Lord, we live our lives. May we trust your plans for this place, plans for our welfare and not for harm, plans for a future filled with hope. As we gather this night, we invite your presence among us, asking that you bless all these elected and appointed civil servants. We give thanks for their service in this city. Grant them the ability to do their work in a spirit of wisdom, kindness, and justice. Help them use their authority to serve faithfully, working to eliminate poverty, prejudice, and oppression, that peace may prevail. We pray for our mayor. We pray for our council members. We pray for their families. Grant us all the courage to lead in bold and new ways, the grace to listen well to one another, the humility to seek the good of our neighbors above our own interests. And as you move among us this night, may we be reminded of your steadfast presence and your unfailing love. Appealing to your holy mercy, O God, we pray. Amen.
Thank you. If y'all will join me in the pledges of allegiance to the United States and to Texas.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. All right, next we have our citizen comment period. First person this evening is joining us online, and that is Ms. Lisa Marie Capoletta.
Can y'all give me a second? They didn't tell us the speaker number, and I thought you guys did online last. Give me just 1 second here to pull my timer up here.
I'll circle back to you.
Oh, thank you.
Noah,
Thank you, Mayor.
Noah Brock. And I'll go ahead and give the lineup, followed by Ann Donovan, Mary Beth Harper, Maxfield Baker, and then I'll circle back to Lisa Marie Capoletta. The floor is yours for 3 minutes, and I'm sorry. The City Council welcomes comments at regular meetings. Persons wishing to speak during the citizen comment portion of the meeting must have emailed citizencomment@sanmarcostx.gov prior to noon the day of the meeting. A call-in number and link were provided, or if in person, signing up before 5:45 today at the City Clerk's office. You may speak once during the citizen comment time period. If you speak on a public hearing topic, we ask that you not repeat those comments during the public hearing on the same topic. There is a timer on the screen. After you state your name, you'll have 3 minutes. When you begin speaking, you'll see that you are in the green. The green will start disappearing. When you have 20 seconds left, you'll be in the yellow, and when the timer is red, your time to speak is up. Mayor and council will endeavor to ensure that meetings are conducted in a courteous manner and in an atmosphere free of defamation, intimidations, personal affronts, profanity, or threats of violence. Mr. Block, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear City Council members, my name is Noah Brock and I live in the San Marcos ETJ. I'm here to provide an update about the Smart Terminal development. The community has been constantly working to acquire as much information as we can over the past month, and we have learned a lot. I was hoping to learn more about the progress and innovation that this project would bring to our area, but that hasn't happened. Most of our questions about the future of this project were met with unknown answers. We asked the developer, what is the timeline for this project? Their answer, we have no estimated timeline for all of Phase 1 or any additional phases. This depends on market demand. We asked, where will the rail spurs be added? Their answer, unknown. The location of rail spurs, if any, will be dictated solely by the railroad approval to access the main line, which the developer does not currently hold. Phase 1 does not include rail, and no rail development is currently forecasted. We asked, so why is rail included in the name if no rail use is forecasted? The word rail is abbreviated, this was their answer, in SMART, and is included in the name because of the proximity to the railroad and the potential to utilize it in the future. Similarly, the word air is abbreviated for the same reason. There is no air traffic forecasted at the airport to directly benefit SMART at this time, but the potential remains in the future, as does rail. We asked, so do you mean rail development is planned for a later phase of the project? Their answer, rail development is not forecasted or planned for any of the property at this time. There has been no communication with railroad on obtaining access to the main line. The railroad holds all approval for access and location for future rail spurs. We asked, what is the need for the entire acreage to be zoned heavy industrial? Their answer is, it's based on characteristics of the site already being zoned heavy industrial, that's 736 acres, adjacency to the railroad and the airport, new major thoroughfare, FM 110, bisecting the property, Highway 80 on the south, and the city's original feedback in 2019 that the property would be the best location for future industrial in the city. Basically, my summary of this is they're just saying that there's industrial, rail, air, and roads nearby, and that the city told them that this was a good spot to put it. We finally asked, are you willing to make changes to the development agreement based on input from the community? Their answer, we welcome any comments regarding specific requests for accommodations that we can review. Our current position is that the development agreement has already been negotiated and approved with the city. This doesn't really sound like a San Marcos air, rail, and truck terminal anymore. It just sounds like a heavy industrial truck terminal. And it doesn't sound like the developer wants our input. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ann Donovan.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Annie Donovan, and I live in the San Marcos ETJ. Every Tuesday night, I come straight after work to speak during public comment. I made the decision back in February to show up to spread the word about SMART and how big of an impact this is going to make in our community. I show up because I care. I care about what happens in our community, what happens to our neighbors, and the impact heavy industrial is going to make on our daily lives. I care about how this development may pollute our air, river, environment, and impact the thousands of fauna that migrate through our neighborhood. I dedicate my free time making sure everyone in Martindale, Reedville, Maxwell, and San Marcos know about the expanded SMART proposal. On the developer's website, they state, Scarborough Lane seeks to better the greater San Marcos area and to improve the lifestyles of the people who live and work in the area. If this were true, they would have gone out of their way to notify the homeowners directly adjacent to the properties in question that a friendly new developer wanted to come to town and bring business and jobs. That a new development agreement was being discussed and they wanted our input. If they cared, they would have given us a seat at the table. During the January 17th council meeting, when the development agreement was undergoing a public hearing, the developer was asked if they had plans to connect with the adjacent homeowners and neighborhoods. The developer responded that they had no intention to connect with the community because they weren't required to. This is telling. They never had intentions to connect with the community and now are only reaching out because the Planning and Zoning Commission asked them to do so. Yes, the developer has been talking to us, but they are not listening. Over the past month, we asked multiple times for 2 town hall-style meetings where the community can come together, learn from the developer, and hold a Q&A. They said they were only available for 1 meeting and that town halls weren't their style. They prefer open house, where people can have one-on-one conversations instead of collaborative conversations. I received an email from the developer after speaking at the last council meeting, letting me know that they were miraculously able to schedule a second meeting. I asked if it would be a town hall style, and again, they told me no. Last Wednesday, they held their first open house. Quite a few people came, but many expressed that they were overwhelmed with the format. They didn't know what types of questions to ask because they didn't know much about the project. There was a handout with the city's frequently asked questions, but nothing about their plans except for some maps presented on easels. After speaking with the developer, they admitted that they answered many of the same questions repeatedly for 4 hours. Some of our community have lived in this area for generations, probably dating back to the 1800s when Reedville and San Marcos were established, yet priority was given to a corporation from the Dallas-Fort Worth area because they can bring tax revenue. Please think about who really is getting the benefit here with the current way the development agreement is written. To us, it feels like our community is getting the short end of the stick. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mary Beth Harper.
My name's Mary Beth Hart, and I live in the Martindale ETJ, not San Marcos. Okay, I want to talk about the size of this new smart terminal. Okay, now the original smart terminal, which was approved by the council back in 2019, and I was here the whole entire time from the beginning until y'all finally voted on it. Okay, the original one was 888 acres. Okay, right now it's in the San Marcos city limits, and it's already zoned heavy industry. Okay, now the smart terminal 2, which I'll call it, is over 2,000 acres, and which also includes smart 1 terminal. It's 2 times larger than the entire city of Martindale, 2 times. It's 9% the size of the city of San Marcos. Okay, just imagine if Elon Musk parked his gigafactory up here above, let's say, Sink Springs or Purgatory Creek on that side of San Marcos. How would y'all feel like that? Okay, I live downstream. I'm going to be affected by this suburb. Okay, the drainage is in question. Okay, there's many, many major little creeks and streams that run through this 2,000 acres. All of them empty into the San Marcos River. Okay, the citizens of Martindale do not want heavy industry runoff into any of our streams that could pollute the river. Okay, the current members of the city administration said during the Smart 1, a former city administrator said during the Smart 1 dealings, we don't want to harm our neighbors downstream, meaning Martindale. They didn't want to harm anybody downstream. Okay, that's not so much anymore. Okay, now I also have a question about the cut and fill. The development agreement allows for 15 to 20 feet of cut and fill. That means the developer can cut down 15 to 20 feet and then build up a big tall thing for 15, 20 feet. Why? I don't know. Why do they need that? And I have a question about that. Okay, water wells in our area are only like 10 to maybe 12 feet deep. Okay, the city of Martindale has also a shallow well for their water, their city water supply. So again, that 15 to 20 feet, that's going to affect wells, the drinking water. And how would y'all like it if all of a sudden the city of San Marcos, your drinking water was cut? Okay, another thing was parks. Okay, the developer is going to dedicate 8 acres out of this 2,000 for parks, 8 acres. Okay, San Marcos requires 33 acres per 1,000 residents. And there's about 8,000 residents in Martindale, Maxwell, Reedville, in that area. And there should be over 200 acres dedicated to parks. We need more trees, more green space. The plants take in carbon and release oxygen. That's a real simple fact. Anyway, they need more parks. And I could talk on and on and on about how ridiculous this 2,000 acres, which is a truck terminal, it's not rail and air.
Our next speaker is Maxfield Baker.
All right, let's see if I can operate within the rails of respectability politics that are expected of me here today. Ooh, a little feedback. Is that fixed? Is that good? Mm-hmm. Cool. So, as you all recall, the last time I tried to speak at the meeting, I alluded to wanting to talk about the SMART terminal, but I think the work that this group has been doing on that issue is sufficient, and I know you all have heard me rail against the SMART terminal, pun intended, for several years now, and that it has not persuaded any of you. So I hope that our community showing up does that and won't waste my breath on that. But tangentially to that, I've emailed many of you, including city staff, about issues that I have been concerned with, largely regarding transparency as it relates to issues like the SMART terminal or issues like the meet and confer agreement renegotiation that I saw was not posted in the most public-friendly way recently to kick that off, right? And in those conversations, I've offered good suggestions, like making the rolling agenda publicly accessible. And I remember really early on, Councilmember Scott, you wanted us to have those packet meetings again to give the community more time to activate and to ask these questions and to create predictability for the developers many of you are trying to attract to San Marcos. And yet, when our community shows up and those businesses are ready to pull the cord and get into it, we all show up because we just heard about the project. We just now are able to, in our busy lives as regular citizens, finally sit down and have a chat with our neighbors and tell them how alarming these things are. And so if something like the rolling agenda were accessible early, that would give us time to basically, do the thing, organize people, right? It's a lot more difficult to talk on this side of the stage than the other, I'll be honest. But the other thing that I have asked for are town halls. And with the new city manager, I was expecting to get some form of town hall, but I've been told that they are too messy. And in fact, when talking about criminal justice reform, specifically, we had asked for town halls ad nauseum. And every time I was told that, oh, well, those just, and this is in an official memo you can read from the chief, he sent it to me, that those often devolve into defenses and accusations, as if those aren't helpful to dealing with the distrust that our community has right now. As I mentioned in those emails to you all, we got a grade. People do not trust, in the survey that we paid for as a community, they don't trust our police, they don't trust the people sitting here at the dais, which once included myself, right? And I'm aware of that. But I see a few things in the strategic initiatives that look like they're going to tackle some of that, but please just hold a town hall. No matter how messy it is, I guarantee you it's going to be better than these isolated conversations that keep being sought after by our police chief or by folks that are trying to meet one-on-one with developers or members of the community. Let us have that messy town hall because it's needed. Right now, our community is at ends, and that poll shows it. So, thank you.
Ms. Capoletta, you are next.
Hi, let's see, where are we now? Okay, here we go. Good evening, my name is Professor Lisa Marie Capoletta. I live at 1322 Belvin. They call me LMC. I'm here to talk about the SMART terminal. My concern is that you're annexing a group of residents and profoundly changing their life to the point where it's a ticking time bomb for an ecological disaster or gentrification with health impacts in terms of ecological disaster, but they did not vote for you. My concern is that you're rendering decisions over their lives, and yet they did not vote for you. Will these residents themselves be able to run for city council? And a promise I will make to the public today is that any of you who elects to vote for the SMART terminal can count on me as your opponent. With my singular issue of the SMART terminal and your broken promises and lip service about how much you love the river. Because we all know it's a bold-faced lie if you vote for the SMART terminal. My campaign will focus on the lack of transparency and communication with residents, how the open house was nothing more than crowd control and use of a Delphi technique to separate residents who do not know how to navigate the unsavory process of annexing them with you as the feudal lords and them as your serfs. When we talk about unintended repercussions of industrial, polluting the air, the water, and the earth, I wonder how much of you really think that you love the river. When you're hearing the residents talk about drainage, runoff into streams, potential to flooding, potential to pollute, they're drinking well water. There's noise from the construction, and once it's ramped up, it will be unbearable noise to the residents. It will be an ecological ticking time bomb because we don't know what they're carrying. And if they are carrying, do we have any authority to make sure that they refrain from doing that? The gentrification and the spike in taxes are going to offset any line of argumentation any of you can make about jobs. And we all know the problem with jobs. They sound really good on paper, but when they're implemented, as in the case of Amazon, which people are constantly complaining about the working conditions, or Best Buy, it's a broken promise. You guys can't even take care of Capstone Cottage. I mean, we've got a picture of them sucking out the sewage out of that place, running it through town, and it's right behind me, and you can't even do that. And that was a former city council that said, oh, we don't have to worry about unintended consequences. Human health, traffic, and ruining their life. You're literally walking into a rural neighborhood, rural community, and you're turning them into industrial. That is sinful, it's diabolic, and you have a promise from LMC. I will look forward to debating you in the public forum, and I will be relentless in taking your quotes, and we will get these reds, and we're going to get some of them to run against you. Thank you for your time, and God bless San Marcos.
And that concludes our citizen comment for today. And next, we have our consent agenda. It is items 1 through 12. Council, I'm going to pull 1. Do y'all have any others to pull? I would accept a motion to approve items 2 through, I'm sorry, I said 12 and I was wrong. It's 15. I'll accept a motion to approve items 2 through 15.
Mayor, motion to approve items 2 through 15.
Motion by Mr. Prather and seconded by Mr. Gleason. Ms. Trevino, let's vote on items 2 through 15.
Aye.
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 Ms. Garza?
A no on number 2, and then a no on, where's the other one? Number 12.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez?
I'm gonna be, give me a
Oh,
second.
psych, I'm just kidding. That was wrong. That was wrong. That's 2. My bad. Sorry, so
Just 2 and 12?
just 2.
Just 2.
Just
Okay.
two. Just two.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I'm okay.
You're good? Thank you. And Mr. Mendoza?
I'm okay with what we have, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the motion passes 7-0 with Ms. Garza voting no on number 2.
Okay. So now we are to our public hearing. We only have one this evening, and then we'll go back to item 1. Ms. Trevino, if you will read that one for us, please.
Yes, ma'am. Hold a public hearing to receive comments for or against Resolution 2023-61R, approving a budget policy statement for preparation of the 2023-2024 fiscal year budget and declare an effective date, and consider approval of Resolution 2023-61R.
Ms. Reyes.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I turn it over to Director of Finance, John Locke, I'd like to thank him and the rest of our Finance Department for the work they've put into developing the policy statement you're considering tonight. I also want to thank the City Council for your direction, which gave us the ability to formalize that policy for tonight for consideration. We're still in the preliminary phase of our budget planning process, but this budget policy statement will ultimately serve as our guide to developing the fiscal year 2024 budget. Keep in mind that we have additional dates throughout the next few months in which we will continue this discussion. We also must stay flexible as we monitor the volatile inflationary market and consider other pending information that will influence the budget process. In May, we will discuss our budget capacity and trends. In June, we'll deliver draft budget programs, revenues, and expenses to City Council. We are also awaiting our preliminary tax rolls in April, with the certified tax rolls being provided in July. Other items to consider prior to proposed budget delivery are the ongoing meet and confer negotiations with both the police and fire associations, as well as the completion of our classification and compensation study and how that will be incorporated. There is still a lot of work to do in the months ahead to develop this budget, but your approval of the budget policy statement tonight will provide the direction that we need as staff to ensure that our budget reflects your goals. Thank you.
Mr. Locke.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. The budget policy statement that was included in City Council's packet was a result of the guidance that City Council provided at the February 23rd Budget Policy Workshop. Since then, we did receive some questions and some recommendations for the budget policy statement. So prior to the public hearing, it would be good to look through those potential changes. There's a revised copy up on the screen that will show the red line. It's actually a red line to what the proposed fiscal year 24 budget policy statement was that was included in City Council's packet. So I'll just walk through all of the changes and see if there's any questions or comments regarding those changes.
Okay, but Council, this is part of our, the presentation. I still need to have the public hearing, and then we'll discuss these.
Okay.
Mr. Locke's making these available, so perhaps those who want to comment at the public hearing might need to know what changes are being presented.
Yes, ma'am. So the first change is on page 1. And actually, before we get to that change, there was a question about the use of fund balance in excess of 25%. If there could be a particular limit established on that, the amount that would be used for non-recurring expenses prior to the remaining amount being transferred to the future City Hall. And there wasn't a particular amount established in the policy. I wanted to just provide council with some background on how the amount of non-recurring expenses that we have had over the past couple of years. Now, this is the total amount of non-recurring expenses in the general fund, not necessarily the amount that we use fund balance in excess of 25% for, but it'll give City Council an idea about the amount of expenses we're talking about. In fiscal year 21, it was $261,000, and I'm sorry, excuse me, in fiscal year 20, it was $261,000. In fiscal year 21, it was $1.6 million. In fiscal year 22, it was $361,000. And in fiscal year 23, it was $2.9 million. So it's more of a roller coaster ride, as you can see through there. That just provides some background on the amount of non-recurring expenses that we have in our general fund. It's not necessarily the amount that fund balance in excess of 25% funded. Going through the actual changes in the document, at the bottom of page 1, there was a request for clarity that what City Council was approving was for us to continue budgeting revenues using historical trends as approved for fiscal year 23. It was just clarifying that we're going to use the same approach in fiscal year 24 as we did in fiscal year 23. The next recommended change is on page 2, and is under Stormwater Management Fund. And this is just clarifying that there won't be a consultant hired to calculate or to determine what the possible rate increase might be in the stormwater fund. The city has a rate model, so the change here is just clarifying continue using the rate model to determine if a possible rate increase is necessary. The next change is on page 3 under general fund. And this change was just to clarify that we're trying to get to the recommended staffing levels for our police and fire staffing. So that language was inserted that our goal is to get to the recommended staffing levels. A little bit lower under the social service programs, there was a request for clarity for the Family Justice Center, the Youth Services Coordinator, and museums, to just add that we are maintaining the funding. So we're maintaining funding for these organizations, and it's not necessarily for the facility or for a position that this funding may be used for. We're just maintaining the funding to the organization. The bullet directly below that is just, again, to clarify that we will continue funding city-hosted events in the combined amount of $60,000 for all events, so that the $60,000 is for all of those events in parentheses. And a little further down, there's two different concepts, so we just broke it out. It's the use the general fund capacity for stormwater capital improvement projects and continue to constrain the capital improvement program to keep the debt rate within the limits established in the debt rate policy. That was one bullet, and the request was just to break that out into two different bullets since it's two different concepts. And that is the final change to the document that was submitted to City Council.
Anything else?
That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on budget policy statement and ask if there's anyone in the chambers who wishes to speak. If you'll give your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Maxfield Baker. I live at 314 Shady Lane, San Marcos, Texas. Just to put that in your ear, your budget is a moral document. Don't forget, because I'm not sitting there saying it every meeting. And I'm curious, I'll admit I didn't do a lot of digging, whether my push and Councilmember Garza's push at the time for an equity officer was still included in this push for the budget, and why there seems to be no mention of an equity-based budget, which we know models exist down in San Antonio, and the purpose of which was to, again, address some of the distrust, the misallocation of funds that our community feels happens at this council every budget session. Another request that I kind of have for the budget that I've heard other people ask for is, we're a large enough city and our activity center is so well loved that we should consider moving to a 24-hour activity center. I've been asking for several years now for a 24-hour public restroom for maybe our homeless neighbors to be able to use, and this seems like something that would fit both of those needs by providing a 24-hour safe place where people could shower, use the facilities to exercise, so on and so forth. And then, the other thing that, geez, I get real echoey here. The other thing about the budget is just making sure that, these public hearings are, again, not sufficient space for people to show up and ask for the things that they need. So again, I think a town hall ahead of these budget discussions would be really helpful. Also, when we look at like large developments, like the SMART terminal, right, where they're going to be providing 2 new fire stations, I believe I'd asked this question of you all before, but where do you plan to get the funding for all the fire staff to service that station, right? We're already understaffed on all those fronts. So just because the developer promises you a shiny new station doesn't mean that we have room in our budget to actually pay for that. The taxes, as Mr. Gonzalez has asked, for these types of projects does not offset the cost of the police, fire, and EMS responses out in those areas. A lot of the annexation that you all do is to grow our tax base, and we hear that all the time, and I've asked the question of Mr. Pantaleon and city staff, when does that actually pay off? Like, at what point can you do the math and say, well, here is a geographic boundary where we can say, all right, we don't need to annex anything else. Because every time you annex out, again, the risk assessment survey that we did a while back shows that police and fire cannot respond out there. And so the chief, each one of them are gonna come to you every year asking for more money and asking for more staff simply because you all have chosen to continue to annex and stretch our core services more thin. That's just a fact of every time you do that, it has really severe impacts on our budget. So take all of that for what it is.
Is there anyone else in chambers wishing to speak for, against, or about this topic? Not, I believe Ms. Capoletta is available and has signed up to speak on this topic.
Yes, I am. Let me change my background. I've got lovely new shades. Good evening. My name is Professor Lisa Marie Capoletta. They call me LMC. I live at 1322 Belvin. Proverbs 10:4 says, quote, "A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich." We're at a pivotal point right now in our community. Our residents are paying double, triple what they were paying for gas years ago. The price of eggs, by the way, if you go to Cornucopia, they're pretty reasonable, and they're organic, are off the chart. The price of basic vegetables, I'm a vegetarian. Everything is so much more expensive, including the rates of our utilities. I've had extensive conversations with the gas company. We're at a pivotal point for our household income. We need to start running our city less like bureaucrats at all levels, whether it's in Washington, at the state level, or at the municipal level, and more like a mom who's trying to balance her budget. A single parent who balances her budget and she cuts expenses so she can provide for her children. The problem is we have lifelong bureaucrats, career bureaucrats, who continually tell us that we need to cut expenses. The two things I support are increased funding for the police so that we have not only appropriate staffing levels, but also appropriate equipment and training and mold study and remediation at City Hall. The rest of this, when we talk about city events, y'all need to have strict standards of how adults are dressed and not doing inappropriate things in front of children. And that has happened at two of our events. There needs to be a memorandum of understanding that we will not engage in this behavior because it's pornography is what it is. And that money will be pulled and paid back if they break that agreement. Additionally, we cannot afford these extra expenses. I work 6 days a week, y'all, to pay my property taxes. So just using a campaign slogan of "I helped those on Social Security" does not help the missing middle or working poor like me. He's talking about a roller coaster ride. Well, I'll say for people like me trying to pay for my gas and my grocery bill and the ever increasing property taxes, city staff are getting raises. They're getting cost of living increases, and they're already getting paid more than the average, pardon me, Mayor, Jane and Joe. We are not. And that's not right. It's easy for them to pay the property taxes. What they need to do is cut their expenses, and you've got a lot of exorbitant programs going on. I would ask the mayor to use her brilliant, exemplar mathematical skills and hold them to a revenue neutral and do not raise the property taxes again. We can't, if you want those of us who live here to stay here, you will quit increasing those property taxes. Thank you for your time, and God bless San Marcos.
Mr. Trevino, did we have anyone else signed up online? All right, so I will end the public hearing, and I await a motion on the budget policy statement.
Motion to approve. Second.
I'm sorry, was that Mr. Scott? Motion by Mr. Scott, seconded by Mr. Gleason.
Yes, ma'am.
Council, questions, thoughts?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. I'm always making a mess, sorry guys. So similar to the feedback and suggestions given by Mr. Baker, in the past, I fundamentally believe that it's necessary for this council, or well, I guess future councils, depending on the upcoming elections, to consider a participatory budget process. We've heard concerns and excuses as to why we did not explore that in the past, which included, the economic chaos of the pandemic, lack of staff, and so on. However, we are one of the fastest growing entities in the nation. That fact, coupled with the findings of the recent survey that indicated that our neighbors, right, so the folks that elected us, distrust the local government and elected officials, in my opinion, is more than sufficient rationale for using participatory budget, that process as a tool to engage the community and to make sure that we are not inadvertently contributing to the replication of injustices and inequities. I do not doubt that in all our hearts of hearts, we are navigating with the best intentions in our neighbors in mind, but if we are not actively engaging those neighbors that we seek to uplift and empower, we are going to miss the mark. So I wanted to articulate that on the record. And hopefully we can consider that. And I think it would be really powerful and really effective. One, to make fiscally responsible decisions, but two, to increase the trust that our neighbors have with us and staff. That's it.
Okay, I'm going to ask Ms. Reyes the question while y'all are still contemplating. Ms. Reyes, is there, we had set aside funding from ARP dollars for equity officer. Is that position in this budget?
Well, it's in the ARP
I'm sorry.
funding.
Is it in the planned budget? Because this is just our budget policy statement that
Correct.
guides staff as they start to put together a budget. We don't have a budget yet.
Correct. So yes, it is something that we would be working on with, that would be funded through ARP dollars. So yes, that is a position that's currently being classified and is going to be going out for advertisement and recruitment.
Okay. Questions, comments, anything further from you on what's come up?
Not at this time. I mean, I think, we've looked at ample opportunities to try to have more discussion about the budget along the way than what would be done.
Absolutely.
And so I know that that is something that we have done and tried to make sure that there is more of that. By us having Zoom, that is something also that provides more access to people at home that may not be able to come into council chambers like they, before. So those are some of the things we are. It doesn't mean that we're not looking at, opportunities for participation when we go through our CIP process and things like that. And there's different CIP projects that are happening that affect neighborhoods, and those are things that do happen within the neighborhoods. We also are having our city university that's starting, that we're doing to try to make sure that people know, hey, it's a Citizen Civic Academy. If you're interested in understanding more about your local government, there's opportunities to talk with staff, to come in and tour facilities, do different things. So we are looking at more of those engagement processes and trying to bring people in that may not otherwise be engaged in city government. So those are some of the newer things that we're working on.
I have one more comment, Mayor. Go ahead. I did not mean my previous comment to come across as indicating that the city is not making phenomenal, massive strides in including the community. I encourage everybody in our city to look at the what was it called? The visioning and all that. It's online. I think it's on YouTube now too, is what I saw. That way y'all can see that under Ms. Reyes' direction, she has provided mechanisms to have even more robust conversation amongst staff and council, for example. Very hands-on approach, workshop type. So I will say that staff is making strides, but at the end of the day, staff answers to direction from this council as a body. And so my comments were more aimed towards my peers and to hopefully looking into doing some research on participatory budget as a tool for the future.
I would need more information in order to even begin to comment on it.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else? Mr. Trevino, will we vote?
All right, Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
Aye.
And Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, so now we will go back, since that concludes the public hearing portion of our program this evening, and we will go back to item 1.
Consider approval of ordinance 2023-24, the second of two readings, amending the official zoning map of the city in case number ZZ-23-04 by rezoning approximately 16.234 acres of land, more or less, out of the Joel Minor Survey, abstract 321, Hays County, Texas, located at 2700 North Interstate Highway 35 at the intersection of the northbound frontage of Interstate Highway 35 and Saddle Runway from H Manufactured Housing and FD Future Development to HC Heavy Commercial, or subject to the consent of the owner, another less intense zoning district classification, including procedural provisions, and providing an effective date, subject to the recording of a restrictive covenant agreement on the property.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Scott.
And I'll second it to start the discussion.
And a second by Mr. Gleason. And the reason I pulled this was what I put on the message board was the restrictive covenants. I thought, and I could have been wrong, that I heard last time that these were the same as what was used, I'm going to say next door, for Whisper. And when I got to looking at it, I'm going, that doesn't seem exactly the same, and it's not as detailed. I will note that the common property line is much shorter in this particular case. But I really liked some of the detail that was in the one for Whisper, so I will, and I warned y'all that I was going to ask this question on the message board. So I'll give up the floor to Ms. Hernandez, who is now our Director of Planning.
Amanda Hernandez, Director of Planning and Development Services.
Yes.
Yes, we looked into the Whisper restrictive covenants, which we had referenced and said that they were similar at the last meeting. If I said they were exactly the same, I apologize for that. They are similar. The difference is that the Whisper South development is zoned light industrial. And the zoning classification has different uses than heavy commercial. So some of the things that were on the list for Whisper included brewery, winery, food and beverage production. Those wouldn't be allowed in heavy commercial because they're under the light industrial overarching category.
So they wouldn't be allowed anyway?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then what the restrictive covenants in this particular case did was, instead of saying, vehicle service and then list, car repair, minor repair, major repair, instead of listing everything that's in the code under that overarching category, it had that overarching category. So anything under that in the development code would not be permitted based on the restrictive covenants. Now, we have drafted up a red line that you can look at. It shows food and beverage and all of the things that wouldn't be permitted anyways, and we can pull that up on the screen if we need it. But just wanted to let you know that, and it is very small. We could adjust the computer over here if we need to, but it is covering those things that City Council would typically ask for in the restrictive covenants. We don't think that a change needs to be made, but if you would like it to be more descriptive, we can absolutely do that.
No, if those are things that aren't, it's just, I heard they're the same. I looked, I went, saw the level of detail and went, I like that better. But if you're telling me that some of the things listed here wouldn't be allowed anyway, then I think I'm okay with that, council. It's just, I was looking for the same list.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Then, any further discussion?
I received some feedback from neighbors of Saddlebrook indicating their concerns. I was just curious, I didn't want to bring that up because I didn't know who all they've contacted, but did anybody else receive those type of correspondence from neighbors?
Was it email?
Well, one was at HEB. Other was a phone call. Yeah, which is fine. I welcome it. It's, I was just curious as to if anybody else received concerns.
I have not been contacted. Did you need to bring those forward?
I mean, I think there are concerns that we attempted to address with what you just asked about. Just folks feeling that they want more housing in that area as compared to, all this other stuff.
Well, there's a lot of housing coming in Whisper, just north. A lot of housing.
Right. Well, I was just curious because I feel like that there's a lot of folks on this council who are a lot more familiar with housing and all of that, and so I figured y'all would be able to give more insight than I could. if you guys receive that type of feedback, but clearly y'all aren't being stopped at HEB, so.
And
okay.
if I may, you can always send them to staff, have them give us a call in the planning department, because we can talk to them about other plans in the area. We can tell them how to fill out a written opposition or in favor letter to be presented to Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. So if you ever get questions or concerns, we are always here. I have a really fantastic, knowledgeable staff that's happy to help.
Oh, that would be excellent, actually. Or if there's like a one pager that has like the different opportunities to give feedback, I think that would be helpful to just kind of
It's on the agenda.
airdrop. Okay, cool.
It's on every agenda, how you can get in contact with city staff,
Right.
submit comments and things like that.
We'll talk.
Speaking of communication, just briefly, yes or no, the council committee that's looking at notification, are they meeting?
Not yet.
Okay. But they will?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Just got to thinking about that. All right, thank you. Council, are we ready to vote? Mr. Vino?
Mayor Houston,
Aye.
Ms. Garza,
I don't know. No, I'm serious. I don't know. I feel like there's like quite a bit of folks who express their concerns, but I'll say yes for now. I mean, I guess yes. I'm going to be outvoted anyways. It's fine.
all right, thank you. Mr. Gonzalez,
No.
okay, Mr. Mendoza,
Yes.
and Mr. Prather,
Aye.
Mr. Scott,
Aye.
and Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes 6-1.
Okay, that takes us to the non-consent agenda, and we will start with item 17.
Consider approval of ordinance 2023-30 on the first of two readings, amending Chapter 62, Article 4, City Marshal's Department of the San Marcos City Code to clarify and correct language to match current law and practice, add a section on Parking Enforcement Division, and add a section on Court Bailiff and Ward Division, repealing any conflicting provisions and providing an effective date.
Second.
That was Mr. Prather. You did the second?
Oh, I thumbs up, but I can, yes.
Are you okay with
That's
second?
fine,
We'll
yes.
put you down as a second. Okay. Are there any questions? Did you have a presentation that we're not allowing you to give, or you're here for questions?
I've got a few
Answer.
things I've got a few things to say, and then Mr. Huffman's here to answer any questions that you may or may not have.
All right,
Or
go ahead,
may
Mr.
have.
Staff.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chase Stapp, Assistant City Manager. This item is the first of two readings for you to consider changes to Article 4, Chapter 62 of the city's Code of Ordinances. Article 4 covers the City Marshal Department and their respective duties and responsibilities. This article was last updated nearly 20 years ago. Since that time, the city's operational structure has undergone multiple changes, and the Marshal's Office has been impacted by some of those changes. The purpose of these ordinance revisions was to bring the ordinance language back in line with the operational structure of the City Marshal Department. Before we get into the ordinance changes, I'd like to give you a very brief overview of our City Marshal Department. Jade Huffman is our City Marshal and reports directly to me. The City Marshal's Office provides public safety and law enforcement services to the city with a primary focus on our city parks and the roadways near and between them, our municipal court, and occasionally response to city facilities. They provide those services through the employment of deputy marshals, park rangers, and parking enforcement technicians. The deputy marshals are non-civil service, sworn peace officers, and are separate from our police department. The park rangers are non-sworn employees with a background in emergency medicine, EMTs, for example. Parking enforcement techs are non-sworn employees who enforce the various parking laws within the city. Since the last time this ordinance was revised, the city marshal has been moved under the ACM for public safety and away from the Parks Department. Additionally, code compliance is no longer a function of the city marshal, but instead reports to the Director of Neighborhood Enhancement. As I mentioned, parking enforcement has been moved away from the police department and is now under the city marshal. So in addition to these changes, the ordinance revisions also contain various wording changes and corrections to bring it in line with current day operations. So I want to thank Mr. Huffman for his hard work on these updates, and he's available, as am I, this evening to answer any specific questions you may have. Thank you.
I have a motion to amend, and it's to fix a numbering item. and that would be to change the second 62.502, which is Parking Enforcement Division, to be 62.503. And the next one that's currently 62.503, Municipal Court Bailiff and Warrant Division, to be 62.504. And I'm seeking
I'll
a
second it, Mayor, but I have a question. Couldn't they do this on the second reading like we do sometimes?
They could, but I just thought we'd go ahead and do it
Okay.
today.
Okay.
Thank you. You have a question on the renumbering?
No, ma'am.
Okay, let's vote on the renumbering, and then we'll get to the other questions.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Ms. Garza.
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
And Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
And Mayor Houston.
Aye.
And the motion passes 7-0.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yeah, my question is, when it comes to you said you were with the Parking Enforcement Division?
They're under the marshal's office, yes.
Okay, are they allowed to respond to regular calls if something comes up, just domestic calls? Is
No,
strictly?
they're non-sworn. All they do is parking enforcement.
Okay, so I'm just kind of curious. Thank you.
Other questions? I will tell you, being on the Parking Advisory Board, I think putting the parking enforcement with this, I don't know whose idea it was, but I think it was a brilliant move. It seems to be working out very well, so thank you, whoever came up with that.
Mr. Huffman actually asked us to consider that a while back, and the police department was in agreement, and I agree with you, their productivity and efficiency has increased.
Yes, it's worked out for flexibility, so that was very good. Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Trevino will vote.
Motion, all right. Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
And Ms. Garza.
Aye.
And motion passes 7-0.
Thank you very much. Item 18,
Consider approval of resolution 2023-62R adopting the city council's strategic plan for fiscal year 2023-2024 and declaring an effective date.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Gleason. I have a second from Mr. Scott. Ms. Reyes?
So Mr. Meagle will be taking this one.
Okay. Okay.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Hayden Meagle, Administrative Services Manager. The copy that we have before you is the strategic plan that Council discussed at the January 26th and 27th visioning session. We did receive a few suggested changes on the message board, and those have been incorporated in the copy before you. I can quickly go through those changes. Let's see. First one was removing a duplicate under the economic vitality strategic goal. We had ensure master plans align with the current comprehensive plan. That is also listed under the first strategic goal of, sorry, as I scroll back and forth. The first strategic goal of quality of life and sense of place. So since it was already under the comprehensive planning section, we went ahead and deleted the duplicate. There's one additional change under the public safety, core services, and fiscal excellence. Under community safety, we modified bullet point 5 to specifically call out emergency management, so that it now reads, enhance emergency management by increasing all hazards and disaster preparedness, response and recovery through coordination and local partnerships and intergovernmental cooperation. I believe there was one additional change under our, I take that back, there are two more changes. Under the mobility and connectivity strategic goal, we spelled out what CAMPO is, the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. And then there was one additional change under the environmental protection area under the environmentally friendly growth outcome to incorporate concepts from the currently adopted comprehensive plan into the stormwater technical manual and the land development code.
I'm still not sure, because before this plan expires and we have another one, we will probably have another comp plan. So rather than say currently adopted and then 6 months from now, somebody needs to know when we adopted it, can we put the name or the year of the comp plan that we're talking about? Or is our intent that whichever comp plan it is, it will be in alignment, which is not a bad idea.
It was intended to be whatever comp plan was there, but, you
Okay.
know, if we want to put a specific one, we can. You know, I think
If it's meant for both, then we're okay.
Okay, I mean, if council's comfortable with that, I think, you know, the goal with these, just for the public's, you know, knowledge, is that we've really been working at trying to make sure that the goals that the council have really reflect all of the extensive work that even our citizens provide when they're going through the master planning process and are on committees and things like that. So trying to make sure that those things are really braided into and operationalized, and that they're not plans that are happening that are just put on shelves. They're plans that we're actually implementing and following as our guide, and when we're developing policies and things like that. So I just really want to make sure that the public really understands that with this. And so I think that the council's done an amazing job of really looking at how this can really go with some of our broader goals, you know, have those goals, have those outcomes that we want to achieve that may change, you know, over time. And then staff will then be working on putting together the tasks that have the specifics in terms of how we move forward with that. And so I've talked with our team also on making sure that this gets put on the website, and we're communicating with the citizens in regard to our progress and things. But I know that's not exactly what you were asking about, Mayor, but I just wanted to make sure, for the sake of context and background, that the public did understand kind of the goal with this new format that we're using, and how that we feel that is more reflective of what the community's work, the council's work, in terms of these particular goals.
Yeah. While we're talking about comp plan, and this was a question that I had with the comp plan document, is it's got ensure master plans align with the current comprehensive plan. And so just because master plans cost a lot of money. And so I'm expecting from the responses, we'll see if there's any problems or inconsistencies when the new comp plan is adopted. But generally speaking, as we do the next master plan, we'll make sure that it's in harmony with the comp plan. We're not going to go spend a whole bunch of consulting money getting all these master plans edited, which I didn't think you were, but that's kind of what's implied here. So I just wanted to confirm.
That's correct. We wouldn't be going through and updating every single master plan immediately after the comprehensive plan is adopted. It would be as those master plans come through in their cycle for update, that they would be then aligned with the currently adopted comprehensive plan.
All right.
And I apologize, I did jump right into all of the changes without really going through the process that council and staff went through to put together this document, and really kind of centering all of council's goals around 5 main areas, those being quality of life and sense of place, economic vitality, public safety, core services and fiscal excellence, mobility and connectivity, and environmental protection. And underneath each of those are a number of outcomes. And then underneath each of those outcomes are a number of strategies. And within those strategies, staff will have tasks that we can provide regular updates to the council and the community on how we're achieving those outcomes.
And those are quarterly updates?
We're going to be doing those updates quarterly, and we're going to have things on the website. But I really, I want to thank Mr. Meagle for leading this effort and working with Ms. Fontenot to get this moving forward. But I also really want to thank the council and the director's team for putting, all of their effort towards this. And this is what Councilwoman Gaddis was talking about earlier in terms of having that real collaborative approach to us developing this, because I think what has happened in the past is there's been times where we get, the council's goals, and they're not necessarily in line in what is feasible or staff is really able to do from a fiscal standpoint or capacity. And so having something that doesn't leave y'all frustrated, doesn't leave the community frustrated, doesn't leave staff frustrated because no one's really accomplishing what we all are setting out to, I think this really sets us all up for more success in achieving the vision that has been set out by the community, by the council, and by the staff. So thank you.
Yes, and I want to thank the council and the staff, the city manager's office, the directors, Mr. Meagle and Ms. Fontenot, for 2 days that we all spent going through this. I very much appreciate the staff providing us a framework to get started, which saved us probably half a day. And so appreciate everyone's participation and input into this document, which I think is a more realistic document as far as being able to achieve things. So thanks
Thank
to
y'all for
everyone.
embracing the new process. Thank y'all for embracing a new process.
It was fun. I enjoyed it.
It was good.
Yeah, I did too.
I think it produced something that we're all proud of and will enhance our community, aspects of public safety, the economy, our environment. It's something that we all can be proud of.
Yeah.
Well, and I really
Maybe
appreciate-
70%.
I really appreciate the directors being there to participate too, so they can embrace it.
That was good. I would like to, since the packet went out one way and these amendments are being shown to us tonight, I would like to make a motion to accept all of these amendments that were presented this evening.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Prather. Are there any comments on just the amendments? If not, Mr. Vino, we will vote on the amendments.
Okay, Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
I'm going to say no because I didn't review them.
Okay. And Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes 6-1.
Okay, any further discussion? We will vote on the main motion.
All right, Mr. Prather.
As amended, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Prather.
Aye.
Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
And Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
And Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right, that concludes 18. Onward to item 19.
Okay, consider approval of resolution 2023-63R appointing Samuel J. Aguirre as city attorney, approving his employment agreement, authorizing the manager to execute agreement and declare an effective date.
Motion approved. Second.
Motion from Mr. Scott, seconded by Mr. Prather. Council, I need to propose an amendment, and I'm sorry I don't know where it is, but where it gives the start date, I believe it says on or before April 17th. We need to change that to May 1st.
I'll second that motion.
Good.
Is it only in there one time?
Yeah. Any conversation on the amendment?
No, ma'am.
If not, we'll vote on the amendment.
Okay. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Ms. Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right. And are we excited?
Yeah.
We're so excited to have Mr. Gary coming back. So we will vote on the main motion.
All right, Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather.
This will be a great addition to the leadership of here in City Hall. So aye.
You bet.
And Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 7-0.
On to item 20.
Mayor, before you
Oh,
read
I'm
the
sorry.
caption, one thing I do want to say is I want to commend Ms. Quirk. She's done a really excellent job in acting in the interim capacity, and we're really thankful and happy to have her on our team. She's been a real team player, very collaborative, and very helpful. So thank you for everything you're doing too, Barbara.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you,
very,
Barbara.
very knowledgeable, very helpful. We're very happy that you're in this interim role. Thank you. Okay. Item 20.
Consider approval by motion authorizing negotiations of a development agreement in case PDA-21-05A with Casada San Marcos LLC to amend the Casada Development Agreement consisting of approximately 30.1 acres to authorize micro-home construction in accordance with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development HUD manufactured home construction and safety standards on approximately 26.789 acres out of the William Word Survey, Abstract 467, and the J.M. Baramendi League Survey, Abstract 17, located at 2138 and 2390 Post Road, and consider appointment of a council committee to review the aforementioned development agreement if desired.
Motion to approve. I'll second it.
I have a motion for Mr. Scott to approve, seconded by Mr. Gleason and Ms. Hernandez.
Amanda Hernandez, Director of Planning and Development Services. You have seen this project a few times over the last few months and actually over the last year or so. If we can go to the next slide. This slide provides a history of the entitlements for this project. Of note on this slide is the development agreement was reviewed by a city council committee which consisted of Mayor Hewson and council members Scott and Baker. Council member Mendoza was voted to replace council member Baker but was not part of initial conversations that occurred in 2021. Next slide. The document as it exists today authorizes tiny homes constructed pursuant to the International Residential Building Code, or the IRC, and the applicant is seeking to allow homes constructed to the HUD, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development construction standards. Next slide. The concept plan which the applicant has provided to us at this time has not changed, but we did want to point out that we're not talking about, next slide, Hayden, we're not talking about the townhome portion of it that's there on the left side. We're only talking about the tiny home area, which is currently zoned mobile home. Next slide. At this time, we are just asking for City Council's authorization to enter into negotiations. We haven't done any of the analysis of the request at this point because we want to see if this is something y'all would entertain us having conversations with the applicant. Again, the questions on the message board had to do with staff's analysis, which will come after we receive your direction this evening. Staff would recommend, since this is just one slightly minor amendment, that we go ahead and do the negotiations and bring all of that analysis to you. But we do have the opportunity, and you have the opportunity, to send this to the council committee. If you do so, we recommend the committee that was already existing for Casada, which is, again, Mayor Hewson and council members Scott and Mendoza. And that concludes my presentation.
I don't know enough about these two different, I mean, I read through all the differences and I'm going, I don't know about electrician stuff and things, so I don't know enough to know, but what is of concern to me is that I believe the idea is this will make the homes more affordable, but we have no guarantee of that. And we changed our code, land development code, made the lot smaller and all these things that we thought would make homes more affordable. And honestly, I don't believe that it did. I believe it might have made them less expensive to construct. I'm not sure that the selling price got lowered any. So I don't know, but I would be happy for the committee to discuss this.
So would I, very much so.
Mayor, are these going to be rental units or for sale units?
Yes, I believe so. In the tiny home portion, they would be for rent. In the townhome portion, I believe they were going to be for sale. And we may have representatives behind me who are willing to, maybe not, nope, wrong item. My apologies.
I show that there was going to be someone available by Zoom.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure if they're available, if they wanted to interject at this point. But again, we're just asking you for the ability to enter into the negotiations at this point, and we'll have the more detailed conversations with the committee if that's where we choose to go with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
I would like you to ask that question, if it's possible to have them for sale instead of rental properties.
Sure, we can ask that question.
Okay, so Mr. Scott's good with going to committee, Mr.
I'm good, too.
Gleason?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm good with going to committee, but just a statement, these smaller homes, smaller lot sizes, accessory dwelling units, all the, mobile homes, all these options, we need to start really looking at our development standards to housing affordability needs to be a driving focus. And some of these new constructions, actually, like accessory dwelling units are not a new construction. You have some that were in our historical neighborhoods that were built, decades and decades ago.
Before we were a city, perhaps.
Yep, yeah. So it's, but yeah, so send it back to the committee, but just try to look it through the lens of what are some ideas that we can bring to construction or development standards that will help with the housing affordability.
If it just gets passed on to the person who's writing the check.
And I have one comment. I thought I remembered the developer mentioning that some of it was going to be for sale, but maybe it was just the townhouse portion of it.
I'm not sure.
I recall something like that as well.
I think, yeah.
So we'll add that to the
I would
list.
love to see a few of those get purchased.
Yeah.
What a
Mr.
great
Gonzalez,
opportunity for people to get started.
Are you good with going to the committee?
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, our direction is going to be that we will not vote on this evening, but we will send it back, send it to the CASADA committee, and I have a member written down differently, so we'll figure that out.
Yes, ma'am. And I think we need to take a vote on the initial authorization, though, for the motion that was made.
Just gonna say.
Okay, then we will vote on that?
Yep.
Mayor Heason,
Aye.
Ms. Garza, Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right. Okay, on to item 21.
Receive a staff presentation, hold discussion on a request by Eckerman Engineering, Inc. on behalf of the McCoy Corporation to remove 2 proposed thoroughfares in the city's thoroughfare plan generally located between Davis Lane, McCoy Circle, and River Road.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion was Mr. Scott.
No motion necessary on this item.
It's true.
I take my motion back.
This is just to start the process.
Let's go.
I'm just all motion ready.
Yeah, and I've got questions, so.
Absolutely. I have a brief presentation and then happy to answer questions. At this point, we're just doing a presentation. This is an informational meeting to let you know that this request is coming forward. We treat amendments to the Transportation Master Plan the same way we treat amendments to the Comprehensive Plan. So the applicant is McCoy's, and they own the property that's there highlighted on the slide. And they are proposing to remove 2 roads from the Transportation Master Plan's thoroughfare plan, as well as the bike facilities that go along with that and some greenways that we'll talk about briefly. Next slide. To add some context, you can see on this slide the zoning in the area. On the property that's zoned future development, the applicant is proposing a special event center, and they are proposing to remove these roadways so that way they don't have to build them as part of the construction of their event center. And McCoy's actually owns quite a bit of the property back there, so these cover a few of their properties that they own. We will go to the next slide. As far as the comprehensive plan is concerned, this is a high-intensity zone, which is an area where we would actually encourage more roadways and more connectivity. But if we can go to the next slide, we will see that one of the roadways is completely within the floodplain. So we're looking at a lot of different variables when we're considering this particular request, and I will tell you we don't have a staff recommendation at this point. We're just here for informational purposes, and that recommendation is currently being formulated to go on to Planning and Zoning Commission. Next slide. We'll take just a quick look at the 2 segments that are being proposed. The first is one that connects from River Road, actually all the way up to Euland, and I'll show a map of that in a moment. But the segment is called an AV 150, which means that it is an avenue. It would be 100 feet in width for right-of-way, property line to property line, and 50 feet of that right-of-way would be pavement. And that would include parking, turn lanes, bike lanes, sidewalks, street trees, and everything that goes along with that. We're looking at the alignment on an aerial, and you can see that it goes right through the center of the Walmart building. We know that that's not going to happen, and with Transportation Master Plan roadways, we create that alignment as development occurs. So we know that this road, if it is constructed, would have to be moved somewhere. And then another challenge that this road faces is that it's showing crossing the railroad tracks. And that is something that isn't easily done, if done at all. So we know that this road would potentially need some sort of realignment if it remains, but again, the applicant is proposing that it be removed. If we can go to the next slide, what we're calling segment 2 is a connection from the McCoy Circle
excuse me, McCoy Circle cul-de-sac to segment 1. This is a CS 9040, which is a commercial street, 90 feet of right-of-way, 40 feet of pavement. It also has on-street parking, bicycle facilities, sidewalks, street trees, and 2 lanes of traffic. What this does not have is a center left turn lane. Next slide. The applicant and staff were looking at the other maps in the transportation master plan. This one is hard to see on the screen, but there's a purple line on this map, and it is the Greenway plan that goes down to the railroad tracks, heads west, crosses the railroad tracks, switches back to the east, and goes all the way to River Road. So the applicant has added this to their request, asking that we remove the Greenway from their property as well. We're not quite sure how the switchback and the design was put into the transportation master plan, but the more we looked at it, the more we realized we're probably going to have to realign this anyways. But just letting you know that this is an addition, since this went to Planning Commission last month, that we're going to be bringing forward with the final request. Next slide. Just a really quick map of the context to show how segment 1 would connect from River Road to Euland Road. It's always good to have those redundant roads that are parallel to each other. So that's another consideration that we're looking at, that if I-35 is backed up, is there somewhere that you can get off of I-35 and get to your destination in another way? And the parallel roads are good for that purpose. Next slide. This is just a summary informational meeting to let you know what the applicant is requesting. There's no action that is needed this evening. We have been in front of Planning Commission. We will be in front of Neighborhood Commission with a similar update. And then there will be a process of public hearings. It goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission for 1 public hearing. City Council is required to hold 2 public hearings. So you will hear about this twice in public hearings and then again for reconsideration. And for now, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
My question is, and I'm following along with all of this, but my question is, and it doesn't have to be answered today, is why these roads were on the thoroughfare plan. What problem were we trying to solve by putting those roads on there? And is there an alternate way of doing it? Or is the situation as to why we put them on there no longer a thing, in which case taking these roads off isn't a big thing?
I will have to consult with our engineering department. They're the main creator of the transportation master plan. While I was involved in it, it was probably added because this is a high-intensity zone. And the idea is to have more roads, more connectivity, more pedestrian access, so people can get around a lot easier in these areas that are identified as nodes. But this is also one of those nodes from the old comp plan that's in the floodplain, and we've had conversations about that and whether or not it's appropriate for high density in this area as well. So it's probably a balance of those, two things.
Things have changed.
Yes, ma'am.
We look at things differently now.
I just had a couple comments in that when the transportation master plan is all encompassing, right? And when you look at it in areas where there's open farmland, it can kind of make sense. And some of these ones that have been put in, and we don't know why, potentially why, this one didn't make a lot of sense to me why it was there to begin with, First off, I don't know how you connect River Road to I-35 access road pretty much through any of that with it being floodplain. And, I'm not gonna have too much of a problem removing this one, I think. It's one of those ones where it probably is nice. It would be very nice to have some other way to get north, living over on that side. River Road gets cut off, and if I have the access road in a flooding potential situation, it is an issue getting north. But those are all shopping centers, and with the railroad tracks there on top of it, this one didn't make a lot of sense to me. I looked at it, I was like, how did that ever get put in there? The one thing I wanted to do too was open it up to Ms. Jones or Ms. McCoy if she had something she'd like to add to this, if there's anything you'd like to add.
Well, she's coming up. I was thinking that one of these was to replace where you go under the railroad tracks there behind Walmart, where the road's about this wide, but
You'd have to build one big bridge there.
but then you can't get over it either. So I looked at it and went, oh yeah, well, that's not gonna work. So anyway.
No, I appreciate
Ms.
that,
Jones.
Mayor and council members, and thank you, Mr. Gleason. I'm Megan McCoy Jones. I'm the CEO of McCoy's, and My address is 1350 IH 35, that's our headquarters. Since you're going to hear this issue a whole bunch of times over the next couple of months, if you'll let me just give you a little bit of background, and then I would love to answer questions. We have a ton of staff and support here too. Many of y'all know our company's a little over 95 years old. Our headquarters was moved here by my grandparents in the 70s. And then we've been headquartered really just up the service road from where we are now since then, and at the site where we are currently, now almost 15 years.
Wow.
14 years. Our headquarters team here is responsible for supporting our 85 stores. We have 2 manufacturing facilities. We have 3 distribution facilities, and we serve about 3,400 employees. A little over 300 of those are based in and around San Marcos. And so our headquarters here supports that whole part of the company. It's our hope, and we hope you found this when you encounter us, that when you encounter people at McCoy's, you encounter folks who really care. We put a lot of energy into our leadership development and training. And for the past decades, really, all that leadership training has almost exclusively happened outside of San Marcos. Our leadership training partner is based in Cedar Park. And so we've done all that training in Cedar Park. So let me give you, for example, last year we hosted over 90 days of training for our leadership team, over 2,700 hotel room nights. None of those were in our hometown. And we'd like to bring that all to our hometown and also do all of our leadership training on our own campus. So we were recently issued a conditional use permit for a special events facility Ms. Hernandez referenced. That allows us to expand this corporate campus to include what we're calling the Retreat Center, which will be located about where those lines intersect on the transportation plan. This will let both our headquarters team intersect our field team more often, and it'll bring all of our training here, which is our highest priority. It's important to me, and I appreciate the luxury to give you a little context of what we're trying to build, because I want you to be proud of what we're bringing to San Marcos. We plan to be proud of it, and we've been really thoughtful about it. This retreat center will include space for large and small group training. It'll have a large hospitality kitchen for group meals. It'll have access to walking trails, a fishing pond, outdoor spaces for our team to be together. We're an indoor-outdoor company, and so we need a lot of outdoor space when we come together. And the additional need for this is we've added over 800 jobs in McCoy's since 2019. A lot of those have been at headquarters, and so the spaces we've classically used inside our headquarters for large meetings, we're now using for office space. And that includes hosting a lot of community meetings. A lot of you have attended those in our headquarters. It'd be our intention that this retreat center would handle those kinds of meetings because we need some more overflow space for meetings. This agenda item, which will also be read at tomorrow's neighborhood commission meeting, next week's P&Z, several times in front of you, reflects this request to amend the thoroughfare plan to remove these 2 segments of road and 1 section of greenway. I'll echo, it appears these were planned a long time ago because of how they are laid out on the map, as you all have referenced. And our intent is to remove those so we can build the retreat center, but the additional thing I want to mention is it's important to us for our campus, this total corporate campus, to be private and secured when we're finished. And I want to talk about that. For many years, we've had a lot of folks who have made the property their home, and that is so hard. I have a tremendous compassion for folks experiencing homelessness. It's a cause I've worked on very personally for a long time. Those of you who are familiar with Mobile Loaves and Fishes in Austin, I served on their board for 9 years. We've been significant donors of both time and resources to them. It's a complicated thing, and yet we know that in order for this to really be a corporate campus and retreat, it's going to have to be a secured campus and private because of that. And so that really begs out of me a request to eventually abandon this transportation plan as it's laid out to allow us to secure the whole property. Many of you know this, but most of the property, even though our headquarters has only been in its current site for about 14 years, most of the property we're talking about we've owned for decades. There just hasn't been anything on it. I do want to mention a couple of things about the design team we've chosen. for both the building and the total site plan. We've selected a design team for this natural environment to do a couple of things. We're removing invasive species. We will add rainwater collection on the site so that we can use that for irrigation. We're trying to design the site where it leaves the land better than it is currently, and it's really been fairly untouched for a long time. And so those things are important to us, and we're in the early phases of the landscape design and correspondingly the pricing of the landscape design. And so we're trying to figure out how can we do as much as possible and still make it a project that's affordable that you're also really, really proud of. So thanks for indulging me on adding some more color to this, because you'll hear it several times, the city will hear it several times, and I hope that you're proud of what we're doing. We're really proud to be headquartered here. This is one of the ways that we can stay here for a long time, and we want to do that. I do want to thank a few people, particularly San Marcos City staff. I especially want to thank San Marcos Police Department officers Chad Philippi and Lucas Wildig, Mark Shoup with Code Enforcement, Environmental Health and Safety Manager Shanna O'Brien, and Community Enhancement Initiatives Manager Amy Tomaitis, and Senior Planner Julia Cleary. They have all been very helpful, both in tackling our neighbors who have moved in on the property and figuring that out with us, making sure they're in a good spot, and then also getting us through the planning process. And then if you'll indulge me just 2 more seconds, I want to introduce these folks who are with me who are extraordinary. Most of you know Phil Hutchinson. He's our real estate manager. He's been with McCoy's 37 years, served on P&Z for a number of years. We also have our engineer, and he's also exceptional. Sam Walker with Eckerman Engineering's worked with McCoy's for about 10 years, I think, Sam, is that right? About 10 years. And then my brother, who is vice chair of our board, Reed McCoy, is here too. So we want to make sure we get all the questions answered that you have as we start what we know is going to be a long process, but we're very eager to get going on this project, if you can't tell. And so this is one of the things, your approval of this is one of the things that we have to get done in order to move forward.
Sounds like an exciting project.
I can't wait.
Sure.
I'm really thrilled. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Are there questions for Ms. Jones?
Well, I was just going to say, very exciting for your project, and we're proud that y'all call San Marcos your home.
You bet.
I mean, a community couldn't ask for a better corporate citizen in their community than McCoy's. And Megan, I personally know of your work with Mobile
Loaves and Fishes.
You got it.
That's a hard one.
Yeah.
It is. It's always been a tricky one.
But in your work with that and
Thanks.
and those encampments out there, I've personally been out there several times as well. So your understanding and compassion with that. But regardless of this exciting project, just the road that we're looking at, railroad tracks, we've had 2 of those over the past decades on our major thoroughfares. They're very challenging, they're very expensive. If this was just raw land, I would be hesitant to have a road going through this area just because of those challenges. But very excited about y'all's project. Proud that y'all call San Marcos your home.
Thanks so much.
I'd like to thank you as well for being a good neighbor and always being there for San Marcos. I remember about 25 years ago, I used to serve with Phil on P&Z, and it's good to see him again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Councilman
Thanks.
Gonzalez.
Thank you for wanting to bring those dollars to our community.
You're welcome. We really do.
Thank you very much.
We're very proud of our hometown, and it's better for our company to have everyone together more often.
Yes.
And so that gives us, God willing, I'm young in this job. This is my first year in this particular job. So my hope is that we get to do this for decades. And, we want this to be something that y'all are proud of for decades too. So thank you for giving us the time and space to explain the whole context.
Well, you're doing great.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Well, thank you. A long way to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so this is no action this evening. If there are no further questions, council, it is 7:35. So I propose that we have a break until 7:45. Be back in your seat at 7:44, and we will pick up then. We have come back from our recess. Our next item is 22.
Full discussion on the Arts Commission recommendation, Resolution 2023-01RR, supporting the Gateway Mural Project proposed for the back wall of the Old Hays County Justice Center, the building with industry, THRC downtown, etc., and provide direction to the city manager.
Motion to approve.
Okay, is there, Ms. Reyes, is there, not asking you to do one if you didn't intend to, but is there any?
Nope, no presentation for this
All right.
evening.
So,
Just here to respond to questions.
We do have a few slides if they.
Oh, okay. Okay.
let's look at a few slides. It's early, we have time.
Okay.
And someone went to the trouble to
To
prepare
put them together.
Good evening. The Arts Commission is seeking. Charlotte Watney, Creative and Marketing Manager. The Arts Commission is seeking the council support for the Gateway Mural Project. The mural location is on the back wall of the old Justice Center, which now houses Industry, Alcabrew, Texas Health and Racquet Club, among others. The wall is approximately 200 by 25 feet, making it about 5,000 square feet. In the first packet, it said by 20, and I hadn't done my measurements correctly. Next slide, please. The commission approved funding up to $100,000 for all necessary costs. The budget source is the permanent art account in the hotel occupancy tax fund, and there are funds currently available for this. This is the major entryway and the first impression most people have coming into our downtown from 35. It is continuously tagged with graffiti, and Resource Recovery goes in there regularly and spends time and money, as you can see, just painting squares over it. A mural in this location would serve as a welcome to visitors and instill a sense of pride in residents. Next slide. Physically, it's a huge wall. Cost of installing it will take multiple factors into consideration. For example, the sheer amount of paint, materials, and time needed to install a mural of this size. The scale of the wall would require scaffolding and probably a lift. There's also difficult terrain. There's a ditch that runs the whole length of it right up against the wall, so that would have to be navigated. And depending on timing and placement of scaffolding and whatnot, the railroad may require us to pay flaggers during painting hours. Next slide, please. The installation of the mural also takes into consideration the professional qualifications of the artist or artist team, along with their experience and talent. The scope of the project is a lot more than just painting a wall. There's a lot of moving parts they need to navigate, and the design process will include community meetings for input. The artist must be able to interpret what the community says into a meaningful visual. Examples of this that we've done before is the Veterans Mural, where the artist met with the veterans and got their input on what they would like to see on it. And then the Barrio Pescado mural, where the artist team met with the neighborhood a few times and really got what was important to them. The mural will also be designed best viewed at a distance so that nobody will hopefully have the urge to get up close to it because of its location. Could you go back to the first slide, please? Thank you for your consideration, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
The only question I had, and I think this has been answered in the past, when we put these kind of murals up, is there some sort of a sealant put on them to keep graffiti to be cleaned up?
Yes, that's one of the most expensive parts.
That's what I thought.
The graffiti abatement clear coat is pretty expensive.
Okay. And then how much coordination do you have to do with the railroad? It was something I kind of thought about with this. I'm like, it is directly up against there. That
Right.
something you have to
Their
coordinate.
right-of-way goes all the way to the wall.
It does.
And so we have already been in contact with them and already paid their engineers to do what it is their engineers do. And they've given us a plan where we just can't get as close as 15 feet from the center of the railroad.
Okay.
But when we give them a further plan, they'll let us know whether we need flaggers or not.
Okay.
If it looks like you would be going over budget, what's Plan B?
Plan B would be, we would,
Part of that be, and I know paying the artist is, significant, but also the actual application. Is it possible that maybe it could be scaled down just a tad in order to stay within budget, or?
Right, well, we have it so that it's up to that amount. So when we go out for artist qualifications, we will probably tell them, 75 to 80,000 will be the artist fee with materials, and then the other part is in case they need a lift and for scaffolds, things that we don't normally have to do for
Right.
murals. So we want to have that extra 15 to 20,000 is a contingency on, oh gosh, we didn't know that was going to happen.
Right. Yeah, the railroad's going to require us to do X or whatever.
Yeah, they did waive their fee for their part, but we still had to pay the $1,000
Right.
for the engineer. And normally, the way this normally comes to you is we have already gone through the design process and we showed that to y'all and you approve it. But because this is a big project, we wanted to make sure y'all were on board with it before we went and put out a call to the public.
Yeah, and I think that wall is fairly flat. The Veterans Wall is beautiful, but you've got the different elevations. Part of it comes out and part of it comes out. And once it was painted, if you can look at it straight on, I'm sure it's great, but you can't because you've got to go down the alley. If it had been scaled down, not those first two layers, it would all be flat. And so on this one, I think it's all flat except for those vertical, I don't know if they're rain gutters or whatever they are.
Parts that come out, but this one made to be viewed from much farther away, like if you parked at the bank.
Yeah.
If you wanted to take a picture.
Yeah.
And I
It's
didn't-
just if the variations in the wall, I would hope could be specified to the artist, and maybe they could incorporate that into the design so you don't have somebody's face going across
Right.
the one of those poles or something.
Right.
That's all, because it really
So
distorts
With
it.
one this expensive, we would bring whichever artist is chosen before they do the design work, to come out, walk the
Right.
area, and they would be able to take all that into
And
consideration.
measure and whatever.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Good.
Are we okay with this? Or
Yeah.
want
Yep.
them to move forward? Move
Yep.
forward? I'm not seeing a yes from Mr.
No,
Gleason.
I think it's a little expensive, but I drive by there, a lot. And it is graffitied.
It's a gateway.
It's a gateway. It's bland. It's terrible. So I'm glad to see something go on. I mean, it's a little expensive, but I think it'll be a good, long-lasting project.
Yes.
Well, this is money that's been
Yeah, for the
saved
arts.
up, and
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
is like multi-year.
Mhm.
So, yeah, my eyebrows were raised to begin with.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about how big the wall, and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay.
I look into if that was just a house, to paint it, it would be like $20,000. That's just to spray paint on it.
With the special varnish or whatever.
Right,
Well,
so
the seal
that's
it.
gonna be the sealant is really expensive. It's crazy expensive.
How long is that sealant supposed to last? I mean, is it supposed to 5, 10 years or anything? Just kind of curious.
I don't know exactly, but we are having a maintenance schedule put together so that we're gonna go every couple of years and check all the murals for that kind of thing, but we do check them regularly for graffiti and
Yeah, I
whatnot.
just was curious if the Arts Commission was actually looking at all the murals they put in, if they're implementing that in part of their budgetary process
Yeah,
or
so
not.
we do, yeah, we have we've set aside a maintenance budget now. Most murals are under the mural committee. This one is actually under the main Arts Commission because it's so expensive.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, and they're also insured, so just so that y'all know.
Also, what'd you say?
We also insure any murals that are really expensive, we insure them, so if there's any damage, we just have to pay the deductible, and then insurance kicks in.
What a concept. Okay, so a majority have said yes,
Okay, thank you very much.
move forward and
All right,
art
appreciate it.
on. Okay, so now we're on item 23.
Confirm appointment to Animal Shelter Advisory Committee and provide direction to staff.
Ms. Trevino, do you want to tell us about this one?
Yes, ma'am. February the 28th, Hayes County Commissioners appointed Sherry Boyette to the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee, and this item is just confirming that appointment.
Okay, so I need a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
A motion by Mr. Gleason. I'm going to give Mr. Mendoza the second on this one. Questions, comments? We'll vote.
All right, Mr. Scott?
Aye.
Mr. Gleason?
Aye.
Mayor Houston?
Aye.
Ms. Garza? Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye.
And Mr. Mendoza?
Aye.
Mr. Prather?
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstain.
All right. Item 24.
Hold discussion regarding the boards and commission process and provide directions to staff.
Okay, Ms. Garza.
Hi, so I just chatted with the mayor, just based on the feedback that I've been receiving from some of our neighbors who have participated in boards and/or committees. I think it's clear that there's just like a lot to unpack historically and just given current conversations. So I am going to recommend that we create a committee about committees. Bureaucracy is awesome. That's where that's at. But we did still want to talk about the timeline today. Correct, Mayor?
Yes, I would like to get everyone's read on pushing all of this, I don't know if you say forward or back, but right now, we advertise, and people need to be thinking about this in December so they can meet the January deadline, so we can appoint in February so people can start in March. I'd like to push all of that so we can advertise, have people think about it in January. That gives Ms. Trevino's office February to pull all that together. Because there's things like the software doesn't collect which your first, second, or third choice, so they have to contact everybody, and it's a lengthy process. Then we'll appoint in March, and people start in April. That's something I would like to suggest, apart from the conversation that Ms. Garza wants to have.
Well,
Are
the
you
only-
all okay with that concept, or can we start thinking about that for next year?
Well, and I was thinking we'd just start in October and keep the appointments in February and just start it a little earlier, too. I do think the timeline is a little short. And with it being over in November and December, you've got finals at school, you've got Thanksgiving, you've
Thanksgiving and
got Christmas, and mid-January for deadlines, everybody's just getting back into the swing of things, so I'm okay with
So
moving.
you're
it.
agreeing with me?
I am agreeing with you. That I think we need to move, we could definitely move the timeline one way or the other, but I was just thinking, just start the process earlier and just start advertising in October. And give people time to think about whether they want to do it. I'm
But then she's got to do the stuff over like December, and we'd have to do January, and I'd rather push it the other way.
if it helps staff go in the other direction, that's fine. I just would like to see the timeline stretched out a little bit too. I think it is a little short.
Well, there's nothing wrong with a press release in October. To let people start thinking about it. Nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But for people to, tell people, hey, you've got to sign up now, et cetera, that it's, and I don't think that there's any detriment to starting them in April as opposed to March
We
for
would
the
just have to do an ordinance
liaisons.
amendment, because in the ordinance amendment back in
Yes.
20, it says February, and so we
Yes.
just have to update it to April.
And everybody that we've got appointment that would be up would be on for one additional month.
Everybody they get one more
And they
month.
get one more month.
So when this comes back, could we have that ordinance change, red line, set for us, ready to go? Because
So
we're
when-
just in concept now.
So we talking about putting a committee together?
A council committee.
Right.
That's what there's a whole lot to explore
Yeah,
here, and
yeah,
I think if the committee
whatever.
can start working and bring some people in to help or whatever, that would be good. So, I'm looking for,
The other thing I'll throw out too is if we create this committee, to make sure the public is aware, to get input to the committee of what they would like to see changes done.
yeah.
Absolutely, right, because right now it's a lot for like one person, AKA Alyssa Garza, to compile. I had no idea that there's so many, I mean, it's a happy surprise. Neighbors who have been thinking about this, folks who have served in the past, I guess that makes sense, right, because they're involved in the past and, yeah.
Well, and something to build on that Mr. Gleason was talking about, is if we did something in October, if somebody's thinking about it, they could start going to a couple of meetings of that commission.
That's exactly right.
And asking questions.
That's
And-
exactly right.
And start
Right.
figuring out in January which ones they want to apply to.
Yeah, and because I've thought about it many times, if somebody was looking into, they start the process in November, and then what are they going to go to a neighborhood commission meeting over Thanksgiving, like the week before? Like, that gets difficult, and the timelines
Right.
get busy. And just whatever we can do to get more additional participation.
Right.
Okay, I still would like to say, though, that having done this for a number of years, especially the last 2 or 3 years, I am seeing so many more applications, people I don't know, people who are fairly new to our community and want to serve, a variety of backgrounds and ages and different places that they live in town and ethnic diversity. I have seen a real broadening there, which is not to say it can't be better.
Yes, ma'am.
But it's way better than it was before. And by better, I mean just broader choices of all types.
And I'm sure I'll appreciate that comment next year when we have a couple of hundred
100
additional
applications,
applications
yeah.
to work in on board appointment day.
Right. Yeah.
Staff will appreciate that too.
Well, and what the public may not know is that, you know, we get our spreadsheet, and over on the far right, we get the other Board of Commission that they were interested in, which I started that a few years ago for me, and then we decided to go ahead and provide that to everybody, so that when somebody gets appointed, then you can use those and go, okay, now they're off this list, and that narrows down. Or sometimes I'm looking at it going, man, we really need somebody here. We don't have a lot of applications, so even though it's their second choice, maybe we better, I can spend 3 hours with that list, figuring out how we can get all those
15 or 20.
all those, get people where they want to be, but also where, because all these boards and commissions are to advise us.
Right.
So the better we have someone placed that's going to help us is a good thing too.
And this is a ton of work for staff, so whatever staff could have input on this, like they think is additional, helpful,
Yep.
help out the clerk's office.
Liaisons,
Right.
clerk's office.
Shake your, yeah.
Okay, so at this point, I'm looking for volunteers before we get into the voluntold process.
I'd like to volunteer myself.
Ms. Garza, I'm putting you down
Yes,
here.
absolutely not, Mayor.
I
Just kidding,
see
yes.
Mr. Mendoza
I'd like to
is
volunteer, yes, ma'am.
volunteering. Did I hear a yes here?
They're just pointing.
No yeses down on this
He's pointing
end?
at me, yeah.
Okay. No, I will. I was just waiting to see if
Okay.
others wanted
Mary,
to
you
jump
want-
in. I
you-
thought I
Yeah.
heard 2 yeses down here.
Yeah,
but
right.
Mary, you want to do it?
I will.
That's yours then.
Did you want to do it?
Sure, why not?
Come on.
Well, then you'll be on it instead of me.
It's up to you, you tell me. You're the mayor. You want to do it, you can do it.
Now I'm gonna let y'all do it.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 3 people who have volunteered, which would be Mr. Gleason, Ms. Garza, and Mr. Mendoza. And so we would need to vote on those. Is that correct, Ms. Clark?
That's correct.
Okay, so we are not voting on anything else other than the committee, and we have 3 names put forward. And Ms. Trevino will ask you for your vote.
Okay. Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza.
Aye.
Mr. Prather. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
That concludes item 24.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I just had one more ask,
ma'am.
if possible. One of the preliminary suggestions would included a survey of current and past appointees and their demographics and/or geographic locations, but then somebody else brought up that it wasn't until recently that those categories were expanded. So I'm not sure if that is like feasible.
The new system does provide demographics.
Right.
And it does say, you know, the race and everything like
Right.
that. So this new system does, and we've had it for like 2 years.
But are they checking boxes?
Some of them are not.
Some of them just put it in the
And some of them don't even put
text.
their, yes.
If you could just like dump all those apps. I also had asked this to Tammy a while ago about like the records retention, like if there's like older ones, just like dumping that. Like basically, I think folks want an understanding of who has been there like historically, and I don't think that lives anywhere online.
We don't have access to the older system.
Y'all just threw it away in the trash can?
I can't,
I'm
I don't
just
even
kidding.
remember like.
But we didn't
name of it.
have an application system before.
Not an application system. Everything was done by by
And what was
paper.
out there was you would see it on the website, but when somebody changed, y'all just changed the website. That wasn't coming from
A system.
a database.
Right.
No.
But they're reflected in meeting minutes somewhere. Council approve them?
There's attendance records.
They are attendance records.
and
And we
you
do
would
have
still have
minutes from
those.
boards and commissions. We do have minutes.
Yeah, but you've got attendance records that would tell us who was on each commission each
Correct.
year.
Oh, okay, so they're like data exists somewhere.
But for the last 2 years. I have to get with the liaisons to see if they have the record. We don't have it. The new system does request attendance, but the
Okay.
older liaisons could have access to their attendance.
Oh, gotcha.
But
So
it was
it might
just
be
a
in
spreadsheet.
paper, it might
There
be
was-
digitized, who
Yeah,
knows?
that was just a
Okay.
spreadsheet, though. That was, there's still no transcript
Gotcha.
system until now.
Okay, we will talk about that in the committee, I guess.
Anything else?
No, ma'am.
All right, we're on to item 25.
Okay, sorry. Executive session in accordance with the following: A, Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney to receive advice of legal counsel regarding pending litigation, to wit, John Kelly versus City of San Marcos, John DeCourty, Andrew Weisener, Basil Pierce, and John Does. B, Section 551.074 of the Texas Government Code, personnel matters, to discuss the duties of the city manager related to the San Marcos Professional Firefighters Association meet and confer process.
And council, I believe we completed all of that at our 3 o'clock session, at which the same information was posted. And so we do not need to go into executive session. And so
Sorry, I was checking baseball score. I apologize, man.
That's important, sir.
hit the mute. And we are now on item 26.
Consider action by motion.
Yeah, just 2 more minutes and you can check that score. Now wasn't the time.
Consider action by motion or provide direction to staff regarding the following executive session item held during the work session and/or regular meeting. A, Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, consultation with attorney to receive advice of legal counsel regarding pending litigation, to wit, John Kelly versus City of San Marcos, John DeCourty, Andrew Weisener, Basil Pierce, and John Does. B, Section 551.07 for the Texas Government Code, personnel matters, to discuss the duties of the city manager related to the San Marcos Professional Firefighters Association meet and confer process.
And on item 26, we did receive information. And on item B, we provided direction to staff. And so now we are on question and answer session with press and public. I believe that we have, Mr. Baker has signed up. I'll then ask if anybody else is in chambers wishes to. And then Ms. Capoletta should be online with us also. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, well, I had to turn that on. My microphone
Should've
was
been
not on.
Okay.
Yeah, so I asked about our equity-based budget and got a bunch of uncomfortable faces from you guys, but it'd be great to get like a real answer. Why are we not using an equity framework for our budget this year? That's to Ms. Reyes or staff.
Oh, and what we do.
Because council, or did council decide and,
You've got 3 minutes to ask all your questions.
Okay.
And then the answers will come, so the
Cool.
answers don't come out of your 3 minutes.
cool, so yeah, if council decided behind closed doors that you wouldn't pursue that, or if staff made the decision that it was too much work, as we kind of heard before, I'm just curious about that. I'm also curious, and mentioned the point to Councilmember Gleason and the mayor during the break about the SMART terminal being identified as an inland port, which sounds a lot different than what the SMART terminal originally was conceived as. I and others have concerns about that, so just wanted to make sure that was on your radar as maybe a restricted use to include in those covenants. Another thing is, when I was on council, I had brought forward the idea about charging vacant property owners, people that are just sitting on really valuable pieces of property, like second floor apartments in downtown. Those should be making us the tax-based dollars that you all are constantly seeking by annexing other areas. If instead we activated these vacant properties by charging vacant properties owners for just simply holding on to their property, because we know what they're doing. They're waiting for a bigger and better investment instead of investing right now in San Marcos. Which, kind of on a side note, for the McCoy's development, you know, they mentioned like, oh, we'd love to bring all of these dollars here. Well, they could have this whole time by putting them in the Embassy Suites and doing all of that in the Embassy Suites. I would ask you all to consider, does this new convention space, meeting space for them, is that going to be like a permanent base for GSMP and undercut the value that GSMP currently uses at our Embassy Suites, right? So if they build a new space, McCoy's is a big contributor to GSMP, will GSMP hold all of their meetings and big events and everything in the McCoy space? Will that be allowed as a condition of their conditional use permit? Maybe you could write that in there so that it's not a loss for us at the whole. Also, I love that Councilmember Garza is bringing forward a discussion about committees, and would ask that you all continue to consider paying those committee members, specifically neighborhood resident-oriented committee members for their time serving there, not people that are serving on a committee as a function of their job, like a city staffer or maybe even somebody who's serving on that committee as a part of their business position. So those are the questions I have.
I will tell you, there's not been any behind closed doors plotting or planning on the budget.
So can I clarify, what I asked specifically was
I'm
why
gonna
why
ask-
was it decided to not use an equity-based framework?
I'm going to ask Ms. Reyes to address that, but I'm telling you, council hasn't had closed-door discussions like that.
Have you had any discussions about it then?
I
Maybe
think-
you, go ahead.
Well, I think I was brought up this last, visioning or whatever, budget workshop.
That
I
was
don't
not
remember.
closed door.
Right, no, it wasn't closed door, but he asked if we've had any discussion.
He asked if it had been behind closed doors.
He just asked right afterwards if there was any discussion.
I was addressing the closed door part only.
We haven't gotten consensus from the council to move forward with an equity-based budget for this particular year. However, we will be having the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer who will come on and will evaluate what things we need to do from an equity standpoint. So that's something that we would look at with the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer to kind of see what those next steps are for low-hanging fruit and what longer and shorter-term goals that we would look at from that perspective.
I had two more questions. Any answers to those?
You
Question about
asked
vacant property owners and paying committee members.
And I don't know if we actually had someone look at if it was legal to charge people. I don't know what we would charge them for vacant spaces. I see where you're going.
If you would like, I
but-
could remind you of the articles that I sent. They're still in your emails. What those articles point out is that you charge them for excess, like if somebody owns a vacant property and a call is made to remove like one of our homeless neighbors, that the vacant property owner be responsible for paying for that call, right? So police, fire, EMS that have to respond to these vacant properties, the reason that they're experiencing that type of vandalism and issues is because they're underused, right? So again, the article was sent to you. I'll be glad to send it your way again.
Well, they use a similar thing with alarm systems that way. They
Right.
charge, yeah, I know what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah, there are great models out there to just make sure that people aren't just,
Mr. Baker, I really need to, I get what you're saying, I get that, but that is something that I'm not aware of, so how that actually.
well, you are aware of it because I sent it to you. What I guess I'm asking is
not
if any of you
aware
all would be
of
willing to
Mr.
carry that
Baker.
issue forward.
Your time to ask question is over. I'm trying to give you an answer. I'm not aware of, if you will let me finish, of what the solutions are and what the legal issue, what we could do in San Marcos, Texas. I'm not aware of that.
Are you willing to find out?
I'm not answering any more of your questions right now.
Very
Ms.
transparent.
Reyes, is that something that we can, I need to find out from council, is that something that y'all, do I have 4 people that want to look into that? I have 1, 2. Well, it would be how to, it was what Mr. Baker said on his question number 2, is charging vacant property owners in various ways.
Should we take all the questions during your 3 minutes? We'll get your questions, we'll get you an answer back in writing. Can we do something like that?
I've written these questions many times and haven't received
I
answers.
want to know if
Yeah,
4 people here want to address it so that we can have staff do that. But I want to see that there's 4.
Sure. I'm fine too, but was this vacant lots or vacant structures, or both?
The model addresses both.
I'm okay with
I mean, you can look into it, but I don't know legally what we could do
Yeah.
unless it's
Well, that's
dilapidated.
what we'll find out. There's
Yeah,
4.
Yeah, look into it. That's
There's
fine.
4 to look into it.
I think we did once, though. I think Michael told us that we couldn't do that.
Well, I haven't heard a way that we would, so that's why I'm asking if we can find out what that would be, whether that's Ms. Reyes or Ms. Quirk, either one.
We'll work together.
And I know that y'all will work on that together. So, I cannot answer how the McCoys are going to use their retreat that's not even built yet. So
That was the first I heard of it. I was pretty excited to hear that.
first I saw was in the P&Z packet a while ago. So, are we ready? Ms.
Is it my
Capoletti?
turn now, y'all? Hey,
Yep.
y'all. Hey, y'all, my name's Lisa Marie Cappoletta. They call me LMC. I live at 1322 Belvin. I love y'all's meetings because it's like study hall. It's like breakfast club for me. I do a bunch of work while I'm listening. And so there was one where the man was talking about, and by the way, thank you for formalizing the questions from the press and public. I always like focus on all the procedural stuff, and it's always nice when we get the split screen back and get the public comment back and the Q&A back, and now we've got a Q&A process. So thank you very much. It tends to get frustrating, but when there's a victory, I'm always appreciative and humbled by you listening to my concerns. My question, and I don't remember the exact number on the agenda, it was the one where he was talking about the gateway to the city and the murals and stuff like that. Do y'all know which one I'm talking about? Because that's when my ears perked up, because I'm Miss ADD, my brain likes a lot of stimulation. And y'all know which one I'm talking about, right? Where he's like painting and he had those photos and stuff, and Mark Gleason said gateway. I'm concerned about the gateway on that side that y'all were showing in the imagery, and the other side by Victory Gardens with our homeless problem. And these aren't the guys who are the local gents who have an alcohol problem. These aren't the guys who are veterans, because I've never seen any homeless veterans in town. And remember now, community, I'm not a hater homeless person. I used to buy them sandwiches and water and stuff like that. And I doubt the people who are haters actually stop and call EMS when they see someone passed out on 35 from heat exhaustion. I'm that girl. I'm concerned about the ones from Seattle and Austin who are addicted to drugs, heavy drugs, who are slobbering and talking to gosh knows who, what demonic elements they're communicating with. And they're in the gateway, and they're in downtown, and they don't leave. And they have little camps that you can't see, and most of my neighbors don't see them until I point out where to look, like under the tree at the little HEB, downtown in plain sight, over there at the Exxon and by the bank downtown. Can we do something? Because all the cosmetics that y'all were talking about in that agenda item don't mean shizzly dizzly do if we've got guys high on fentanyl and speed talking to whoever they're talking to, invisible people or whatever they're seeing, and people's safety, and it's ruining the quality of life. And to get them in a treatment program and get them somewhere where they're safe and they can change their lives. That's my concern. And finally, in terms of the gateway, are we notifying the Victory Gardens neighbors of who's staying at that shelter? Because my friends and I see these fights break out. They're sitting around smoking cigarettes, and they lay around all day while the rest of us are working our keisters off to pay our property taxes. And that's my question, and God bless San Marcos.
Okay, and I cannot answer that question. Do we have anyone here who can? I don't know. The concern
I mean,
is
because
how
don't
much-
you think, y'all, if it was a rich white neighborhood, they'd be telling them who was there. They wouldn't even let the homeless shelter there. But those are Hispanics after all, right? We're just going to let these unsavory characters sit around all day, smoking cigarettes, breaking out in fights. And they're not locals, y'all. These are dangerous people. They're scary. I've seen their behavior. So, I mean, I don't want people to think I'm a homeless hater. I'm a safety lover. And I know our police are working hard, but I mean, that's the core. And if not, city staff, y'all should have the answer on the tip of your tongue. And if you don't, you need to ask yourself a question, why don't I? And I appreciate you affirming my question, Mayor. Because we know it doesn't happen in the rich neighborhoods. Now, does it?
Is this something we can look into and?
Yeah, Mayor, they never get back to me.
Yeah.
But whatever, at least it's in the public forum that somebody's concerned, because I think, and Mr. Stapp probably knows, I think that, isn't there like, are we supposed to be notified when there's a child predator, or do we just have to look it up? I don't know, but I just think they should know, y'all. And if they don't, can you please chop, get working on that? And I would encourage, just finally, and I know you're letting me go a little over my time, I would encourage city staff around 4 o'clock. For some reason, that's the magic witching hour in front of Southside, to just start driving by there between 4 and 4:30 and take photos and observe the behavior. And then go over there downtown.
Okay.
Yeah, and then go over by the old bank, and then go over by the Exxon, and see if that's the
Okay.
gateway you want to rep. All right, y'all, thanks for listening.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Stapp, did you have an answer or some
Well, Mayor, I was-
thoughts on the matter?
I was going to try and answer a question regarding the sex offender registration. Regardless of your residency status, whether you be homeless or you have a permanent address, you are required to register with the local law enforcement entity if you're required to do so after being sentenced. So they are, the same rules apply to our homeless neighbors as those who are housed.
Bingo! Thank you, Mr. Stapp. So chop, city staff. They need to start publishing that stuff to the neighbors. Thank you, Mr. Stapp. I thought there was something odd about.
Okay.
Sometimes these things just come to me like a whim.
Okay. So, with
Thank
that,
you.
I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Peace out, y'all.
I've got a motion from Mr. Gleason, second from Mr. Scott. Ms. Trevino, let's vote on whether or not we want to go home.
All right, Mayor Houston.
Aye.
Ms. Garza.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mendoza. Aye. Mr. Prather. Aye. Mr. Scott. Aye. And Mr. Gleason.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
We're adjourned at 8:25.